All right, we are live with another episode of the Blue Crocus Experience. And today I'm joined by Daniel Wright out of Charlotte. And man, I'm excited about this one. We've been connected for 2, 3, 4 years, maybe even at this point. It's been a second. We've been connected for quite a while. I've been following his journey as an entrepreneur. There's more that we're going to get into that came before we connected, his journey as an entrepreneur. But I'm excited to dive into this one. Daniel's a very, very motivated business owner. He's very consistent in his actions. We're going to get into that a little bit. And he puts his head down and gets it done. So I'm excited to dive into it. Welcome, Daniel.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you having me on. Like you said, it's been a long time coming for sure. We've known each other for a while. I feel like the relationship's gotten a little bit deeper over the last couple of months, and finally the stars aligned. So all those nice things you said about me, we'll see if we uncover those and see if it's smoke and mirrors, see if it's true. But I do appreciate it, man.
Yeah, we'll let the audience decide. And guys, as always, if you're listening, we've got 10 people on already. Please drop comments, questions, whatever. Join in the conversation. It helps the algorithm get it out there. And it's fun for us, too, to answer those questions as you're going. So, Daniel, I think where I'd like to start is where did you start? Because there's some questions. For those who don't know, I've been following Daniel. Like I said, he's been on my Dream 100 list for a long time. And the stars finally aligned, like he said, for us to work together in a business relationship. So he jumped on as a client a couple months ago, and we're busy working on stuff for him. And so I've gotten deeper into their business. This podcast is a chance for us to get the word out for him. It's a great backlink for him. This is kind of how it all came together, right? And of course, I wanted to chat with him in a public sphere as well. But as we've dove into it, I'm looking to, what's the story? We're painting a picture of him with his brand. He's doing some cool stuff growth-wise, and so it's time for him to really start to build his personal brand online. And one of the things that we're doing is kind of going back, where did he start? And so this is a chance for me to learn some things, for you guys to learn some things as we listen too. But Daniel, take us back to, where did it start? Because I know that what you're doing currently is not what you were always doing. I've seen some snippets of it on social media, but just lay that out for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to give the elevator pitch here and keep it concise. But long story short, I've been involved in entrepreneurship, business ownership since I was about 14, 15 years old. So that's been about, 18 years now. So I'll let you kind of do the math and figure out how old I am. But so I've been doing it since I was young. Started out as a lot of kids do. In suburbia, you start a lawn care business, start mowing grass, trying to, just make money. I always enjoyed working. I always enjoyed earning my own way. Even as a kid, I grew up in a good home that, normal middle-class neighborhood, my parents could give me money to go to the high school football games on a Friday night and things like that. But when I really wanted something, I had to earn it. So I started with that back in high school, grew a lawn care company. Then my dad actually ended up joining on board with me towards the latter years of it. He had gotten laid off in the 08, 09 area. He worked in construction and stuff. And so he joined on board there, grew it to be a full service company. Fast forward a couple of years, life took us in different directions. Him and the rest of my family moved out of town, a couple hours away. We were trying to still kind of run it together. And then I was like, yeah, we're good with this. So I moved to North Carolina. Then we sold that company. So that was my first taste of entrepreneurship, like true entrepreneurship. And it was a blast. Since then, I moved to North Carolina in 2011. So I've been down here for, I guess it's about 12 years now. And I've always wanted to be in business. And I started kind of going down that path, because I never went to college. I never went off to college. So I never had that experience to take off and spread your wings, right? Figure out who you are, what you want to do. So when I came down here, I was exploring all sorts of different working opportunities, whether it's working at marinas, just pumping gas in boats, working at restaurants, being a server, work as an employee at a landscaping company, lumber yards, fire alarm installation companies, you name it. I was doing it. So I got involved in the fire service to be a fireman, and I started off volunteering, which I really enjoyed it. It came at a good time in my life where I really needed some guidance and some structure, and that place provided it. I was fortunate to be surrounded by a good group of people that really had my best interest in mind and helped grow me as a young man in my early 20s. And that kind of progressed. Fast forward that, I was, after couple years of that, I met my future wife, well, now wife, but at the time I met her working another job. Then we kind of fast forward our relationship. I was working as a full-time fireman because I had started as a volunteer, got into it full-time, and had at the time I had started another lawn care company down here in Charlotte to just try and, I guess, scratch that itch of having my own business again. And I was working full-time fireman, working as a part-time fireman volunteer, and then this opportunity with Proline came to me. So the guy that I worked with at the full-time department, he started it as a side job while he was still on shift as a fireman. Then he got promoted to a chief. He didn't have time to be able to run a side job, so he asked if I'd be interested in buying it from him. And at the time, I had no idea what parking lot maintenance was. I asked him, I was like, what do you do? Just go pick up trash or what? And he said, well, not exactly. So I did some research, looked into it, talked to my wife, Kelsey, and we decided to pull the trigger on it. And this was back in August of 2016. So if I do my math right, that means we're sitting at right about 7 years in on it from the start. So that's where we're at today. Ever since then, I sold my other lawn care company that I started in North Carolina in beginning of 2017, left my part-time fire department job at the end of 2017, left my full-time fire department job in the beginning of 2018 when my wife graduated nursing school and got her a job, and then went into this full-time and haven't looked back since. So it's been a wild ride. I mean, the last, what was that, 17, 18 years or so, but it's one I wouldn't trade for the world, that's for sure.
What a cool journey. What a cool journey. I didn't actually know that you didn't start the company. So that's a cool nugget for me. I knew that lawn care was a crucial part of the growth, but that's cool. On the firefighter side too. Very cool.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. When I started, or when I took it over, when I bought the company, it was a small side company. At the time, we just offered line painting services, and now we're doing full parking lot projects, working HOAs, shopping malls, things like that. So, I'm still friends with the founder. They're some of our good friends. We spend time with them, quite a bit throughout the year. And he loves watching the journey of what we're doing with what he started. He just knew that he didn't have the bandwidth to be able to take it and run with it, and wanted to make sure it would go somewhere that it could. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea that it would be where it is today back then? Because I know you're someone that likes to cast a vision into the future, but sometimes you can surprise yourself as a business owner too.
Honestly, Lewis, I think it falls more into the category of I surprised myself. I always knew I wanted to have a big business. I mean, that's always something that I've always dreamed about and saw myself doing and things like that, but I never really knew how. And when I got into it, I mean, the industry, it's a good industry. It's a niche market. It's not something that people just wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to start a parking lot striping company, so it's a good market to be in. It's a good industry to be in, but I never really knew like what it was capable of until about 2017, 18-ish. I started working with another paving contractor in the area. He hired me to do some striping for him. So he did the paving. He needed somebody to paint the lines after it was paved. And he honestly, he kind of took me under his wing and started just teaching me like what the industry is about. He told me in 2017, he's like, man, you need to buy a seal coating unit. I said, why do I need to do that? No one's ever called me for it. He said, well, as soon as you buy a seal coating unit, people will call you. I'm like, there is no way that's how it works. But sure enough, that winter I bought one and calls started coming in and it was crazy. So he kind of just started opening my eyes to what the opportunity in the industry was. He said, it ain't going to come without any hard work and some sweat and some risks, but you can really make it in this industry if you want to. So it's definitely been a surprise so far. And like the more that we continue to unpack is the more surprising things get. So
it's been fun to watch. I mean, I think 2019 or early 2020 is when we connected. And just in that time, I mean, that was only 4 years after you started, right? So it's almost, I've kind of been in for half of the ride, I guess, watching from afar.
Yep.
Something I've noticed, I'm gonna kind of divert here a little bit to the personal side. Something I've noticed with you, and correct me if I'm wrong, because social media lies all the time. We all lie on social media to some extent by omission, and not necessarily on purpose. But You seem like someone that is very focused on what's in front of you. You don't need a lot of outside affirmation. You kind of just set your mind to the task and head for it. Where did that come from? Well, correct me if I'm wrong on that, because maybe you do have, a group of friends that are always pumping you up. But it seems like you're kind of there. You're in the gym. You're reading. You and Kelsey hang out on the weekends on the boat. Where did that come from? Have you always kind of been that person who kind of just goes for it? And why do you not need that external validation and that gang of people? That a lot of people need to travel with that, and they do it for the external affirmations.
Yeah, I think Lewis, to a degree, yeah, I've always been that way where I just kind of marched to the beat of my own drum. I mean, dating back to high school when I started my first company, that was my life. Is every day. I wasn't big into sports. I wasn't big into the team stuff, like the extracurriculars. My life was I'd go to school and I'd work in the afternoons and evenings. I'd work on Saturdays. I just liked working.
Great for the
And
social life.
do what?
Great for the social life.
Exactly. Yeah, really great for social life. But I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed working and building and developing stuff. And so I've never really, I mean, yeah, everybody feels good to get complimented or kind of get boosted up or say, "Oh man, that's so great," or so proud of your success, or all the stuff that people say as you start to just make little steps forward. But it's never been something that motivates me. Like it's not something that I have to keep going. I'm a big believer and agreeer with something that Ed Milet says a lot, which he talks about that he's addicted to the expansion of his being. And that's something that when he said it for the first time several years ago, that I heard him say it, I'm like, man, I've never really thought about it that way. And, you hear people talk about, I'm not sure, who's, where people stand with their faith and things like that. But I, as a Christian myself, I believe that there's, when you die, that you have opportunity to go to heaven. And one of the things that I've always kind of said is it'll be the worst thing in the world if I die and go to heaven and God were to show me the man that he created me to be. And if I had to look at him and say I wasn't that, right? And that's always like somebody could say, well, oh, you could think he creates you to be anything, right? You can go down a rabbit hole like crazy with that. But at the end of the day, if I lay down at night and know that I'm giving it my best every day, not saying every day is perfect. I mean, there's days where I'm not the greatest husband in the world. I'm not the greatest business owner, friend, whatever it may be. But if I can say, hey, you know what? I gave it my best. I'm trying to live up to my potential at where I'm at in my life and where I want to go and what I believe that I'm capable of, then yeah, that's what fulfills me. I don't want anyone to ever say like, yeah, he gives it 80%. He's leaving a little bit in the tank. So to go back to kind of like bring it back full circle to your question, that external validation is always great. I mean, I have a network of individuals that I'm surrounded by, in a contractor group that I'm a part of. And I have friends that I've developed in this industry and outside the industry that I definitely will go to sometimes and say, hey man, like, am I losing my mind? Am I crazy here? And yeah, so every now and then getting that external validation helps just reinforce like, no, like, keep going. But it's not something that I need. If anything, when things get hard, I tend to actually close down and just work harder to start making the proof happen that it's going forward.
Proving to yourself, probably to some extent, as well as proving, externally to the team and whatever. And I want to dive into that a little bit. So someone who's 14 years old, going to work after school on the weekends, like I kind of joked about no social life, but there's a dedication there, right? There's something that you're striving for, even from a young age. And what I've noticed is the people that have that trait tend to hold a very high standard of excellence. I've certainly noticed this with you, in our interactions, right? So there's a very high standard of excellence. And if you're working solo, that's great. But then when they become a boss and they have to lead people, no one can ever be good enough for them. And I'm curious if you struggled with that and how you adapted to that, because what I see now is a very strong team culture. But I'm curious how you navigated that, or if it was an issue at all.
Yeah, absolutely is an issue. For the first several years that I owned the company, I had a very tough time retaining people to work with me.
Mhm.
And part of it, was because we were kind of growing. So it wasn't a full-time company. We were slow in the winter time, whatever it may be. So the workload was a little bit of part of that reason. But a big part of that reason was because when I was the person out there doing all the work and I have that high level of expectations and standards and things like you mentioned, I expect everyone else to be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had not yet developed the emotional intelligence levels to be able to communicate those in a respectful and uplifting way, in a way to teach. Instead, I would just say, you're doing it wrong. This is what needs to be done. Don't mess it up again.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't want to say it ever became like a hostile environment, but people probably had the feeling that, well, I'm never going to be good enough to work with Daniel. Not saying because I'm this, great high achieving perfectionist, but because I never actually empathized with the fact that they were learning too, or that they were maybe trying their hardest that they knew how to try. And I
Mhm.
never gave that grace. It was either right or wrong. And right was Daniel's way. And that was it. So that was the type of leader I was several years ago. I would like to say that since then I've developed a little bit. I rely more on the team and their experience, their perspectives, and things like that. But there's certain things, Lewis, though, that we just don't negotiate. We say that our standards are not negotiable, and if we have a standard of excellence, it's not negotiable. Now, that doesn't mean though that I don't give grace, that we don't provide more opportunities to learn and more things to teach people and to actually bring them up versus me just thinking you should know it because you saw me do it once.
Yeah.
So the levels of standards are not negotiable, and being excellent is not negotiable to work on our team. However, we've changed the strategy and how we achieve that excellence to where that way it's more of a team culture being built.
I love it. I love it. Can you talk about your jars?
Yeah, so the jars we started that this year. So the jars that you're referring to, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, are our core value jars,
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
right? So we have they're like the small glass jars. We have them etched with our company name on them, and then we end up putting each employee's name on each jar. And our lobby in our office out here, we're in the middle of moving a lot of things around right now. That's why you just have a plain white wall behind me because we're trying to get things figured out. But out in the lobby, we have it set up where all of our employees in the company have a jar with their name on it. As I mentioned, there are core value jars. So our company operates extremely heavily on our 6 core values that we have as a company. We call them our 6 commandments. It's kind of going back to the faith stuff. You have the 10 commandments in the Bible. We got the 6 commandments in Proline, and we operate by those. I actually got this idea from another company, a much larger company that a buddy of mine used to work with, and he said it was great for their culture. And what it is we have poker chips. They're core value poker chips that they have on one side of them, it has our company logo and everything. And on the other side of it, it has the core value listed on it. And it's all branded in the company and stuff like that. So what we do is we encourage specifically leaders in the company, but it can also be peers to kind of nominate, so to speak, this. But we encourage everybody to try and recognize each other when they are going above and beyond for exemplifying our core values. So one of our core values is help people. So if there's somebody, there was a situation earlier this year where we were doing some parking lot work and we had a section of the lot shut down in an apartment complex. So then people were, couldn't park in front of their homes. Well, there was an elderly person that was trying to carry groceries in. Well, one of our guys stopped what he was doing, went over to go help grab groceries and walk them up to the door because it was a much longer walk than they would normally have to take. That would be something where one of our people went above and beyond to help somebody. So then you get given a core value chip for helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did this year is, since we started, it was okay, well, that's great. We're giving out chips. That's great. People are trying to do these things, but what are we going to do with them? So what we decided to do was the person with the most chips at the end of the year, it's just a very simple thing, is you can either get a bonus, like a cash bonus at the end of the year, or you get an all expense paid trip to an industry expo or like a conference. But in the meantime, we have like a shopping list that people can cash in their core value chips for, so it could be things like gift cards, Yeti cups, AirPods, whatever it may be. And like, obviously the bigger stuff takes more chips, but nonetheless, though, that doesn't get deducted to the end of year total. Like, you can still cash them in. We have a spreadsheet that kind of keeps track of everyone's chips. So even if they cash them in throughout the year, we can still say, hey, this person earned the most throughout the year, so they won the end of year prize. But those jars, we put them on display out in the lobby. Like I said, I think the one you're referring to is a picture that it's on like our company logo and stuff. Like I said, everything's under construction right now, so that's moved around. But nonetheless, throughout the moving around, they have stayed on display for anyone and everyone to see, because we want it's something to be that people are proud of, and they can look at their jar and say, yeah, like, this is what I've earned. So it's fun. The guys like it. The team likes it. It's kind of a little bit of competition, who's got the fullest jar. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, I love it. And it takes a concept. We're actually working on something similar. So I'm going to steal some of those ideas and take it to what we're doing, because, everyone throws around core values, run your company by core values and stuff. And I've always agreed with that, right? But running your company by core values in practice is an entirely different thing than agreeing with it in theory, right? And you can think, oh, that's a great idea. But we had to hire or fire one of our most technically capable people on the team this year because of a core value discrepancy. We couldn't align on that, and that's when it really stuck for me. It's like the burden that was lifted on my shoulders, and the team started to come to life again, because there was such a core value mismatch. Like, we had core values, but I wasn't actually hiring and firing by them, right? We said this is our core value, but once we got rid of that person, it was like, man, the alignment now, and everyone's, we're marching toward the same destination. And that's where I'm trying to work out a goal and a kind of a way to cash out, I guess, on that. And I'm going to take that. What are your other core values?
So our 6 core values at our company is create a great experience, help people, build relationships, take ownership, always learning, and
put me on the spot.
Was that 5?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. So create a great experience, always learning, take ownership, build relationships. I don't know why I'm blanking on the last one. Where is it at? Oh, geez. Well, I guess I'll be put on the spot then. I'll take a peek real quick.
I love it. And knowing your core values while he's running there, knowing your core values is so key.
Do the right thing always.
Do the right thing always.
Yeah,
I love it.
And doing the right thing always would be to know your core values. So, we'll go ahead and,
Sorry to put you on the spot publicly, but
I
knew you'd know them.
It's all good. I got to be tested every now and then too. So when they become so, I mean, not to divert from this, but like when they become so ingrained in what you do, you don't really have to think about what they are. Right. It just becomes part of who you are. So then to define them every now and then, it's like, okay, yes, I can define them. And we have them on the wall in the lobby. That's why I just went and look, we have a huge thing in our lobby that has them displayed up there and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it just becomes part of who we are. And that's why we reinforce it. That's why we reward people for it, for things like that, because yes, sometimes negative reinforcement has to happen, punishments or whatever, if people do things wrong, but we try to aim towards positive reinforcement and recognize when people are doing things right. So that's why most people here it just becomes part of who they are.
Yeah, part of the culture. And you see that in the work that you guys put out, and it's fun to watch. It certainly inspired me to, Daniel, I said I've had you on my Dream 100 for a long time. If you had jumped in with us a year ago, we wouldn't have been ready to work together. We wouldn't have been able to align with the core values that you were looking for. And so it's cool because the timing was right for us to connect. But you've definitely been someone that's inspired me as a fellow business owner, because I see that consistency that you're putting out there. I want to dive into that a little bit. I'm curious where this consistency came from. Is it from your dad? Is it just something that you developed, dad or mom? But typically, we take after our dads.
Yeah. I'd say honestly, Lewis, I've always been a little bit of a um I guess some people would call like OCD or like kind of like obsessive compulsive, like, hey, like this is my routine, this is what I stick to, and like I don't veer from it.
Mhm.
You know, if you ask my parents when I was little, I was always wanting to know like what the plan was for the day. Like what's the schedule? What are we doing? You know, and like I had since I was a young age. I mean, if you talk about, parental influence and stuff like that, I mean, I remember growing up every morning I would wake up and go downstairs and my dad would be reading the newspaper, drinking coffee, and I would sit there with him and he would turn Sports Center on after a little bit and things like that. And so like became like getting into like just a routine of life, which I think we all do to a degree. There's people who wake up every day and have no idea what they're doing, when they're doing it, where they're doing it. But I would say most people have a generalized routine of life. And I've always been somebody who just likes that. It really makes life less stressful because you just know what you're going to do. You just know what to expect. And you know that if you do these things, you will get these results. And that's just how it goes. So that level of consistency, I mean, whether it's you're referring to, going to the gym or reading or things like that, um, it's just what I've learned over the last several years to just really lean into that. And then even when things get busy and chaotic and stressful and whatnot, that's when you should lean into it harder. Really stick to that routine, really stick to that schedule because and I'm no psychologist or psychiatrist or anything like that, but from my understanding, anxiety, which is something that's a big buzzword that a lot of people suffer from or have to deal with on a regular basis, um, it is generally caused by having like you feel like you're in a lack of control, right? So if you have a routine and a system that you follow day in and day out, you have way more control over your day-to-day life. So therefore, the anxiety about it isn't really there. Alex Hormozy describes it well. He says anxiety comes from having too many options and not knowing what to do. If you know what you're going to do every day, the anxiety kind of goes away. So I think I really started leaning into the routinistic personality and lifestyle back in probably about 2019 to 20ish when things were really starting to pick up in business. And I was like, all right, this is it. Like we either have to figure this out or I'm going to look like a freaking idiot to people, that I left a career job and went out on my own. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into that. It wasn't like a trait that I necessarily would say I picked up from anyone.
You just knew you had to do it to be the leader that you needed to be the person that was doing the things that allowed you to move forward. I get it.
Yeah, man. Like you're a reader. I mean, you see all the books behind you. Like you take in information, you learn, and things like that. A lot of who I am today, and I'm sure a lot of who you are today, Lewis, is all just a big conglomerate of the stuff we've been learning. Mm-hmm. Right? Like you said, we've kind of been on a journey together in our own respective businesses and lives. But as people who continue to learn and grow and develop, like you just start to become what you learn. They say you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, you could also become the average of the 5 books that impact you the most, or the 5 podcasts you listen to the most, or things like that. So it's just what you spend your time learning and doing is what you'll end up becoming.
Yep. What you focus on grows. It's a law of the universe. It's what you focus on improving and continually lining up with.
Yeah.
How did you transition from, obviously you were in the field doing the work. That's how you started. How did you transition from that to where you are today? Because I don't think you're out in the field a whole lot right now. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm not. Honestly, I painted a couple of lines at a job a couple months ago. One night I went out and just went to go check in with the guys, see how they were doing, see if they needed anything. And I was like, hey, you mind if I paint a couple of these lines? And it was best that I stopped painting after just a couple of lines because my job now is more just the sales, business development, coaching people, building other leaders, things like that. But transitioning out of it, funny little story on that. The first time that anyone else, well, let me take that back. It's not the first time. It was technically the second time that anyone ever did a job on behalf of Proline, like an employee of Proline did a job without me there. No, both times I was out of town. So the first time was right after I got into the company. I had my neighbor helping me, and I was like, man, I got to go out of town for a wedding, but like this client needs this done this weekend. Can you do it? He's like, yeah, no problem. I'll take care. Well, that did not go well. So then a couple years later, I think it was probably 2019 or so, I was like, okay, like I've got these people who are now well trained. They understand what we're doing. They're responsible, and they needed to do this. They needed to do this job on a weekend, and I was scheduled to go visit some family or something. And I'm like, all right, well, you guys are going to do it on the weekend that I'm out of town, because any other time that I'd be in town, I would show up and try and help, and try and do things. So that was how I really had to break it, was just say, okay, people are going to go do this without me there. And I have to trust them. I have to trust our system, our process, our training, things like that. Now, ever since then, it's been continued to be nothing but a development of just building our training systems and our operating manuals and things like that help guide people when I'm not there, or when a leader is not there. They can still make the right decisions. But transitioning out of it's hard, Lewis. I mean, as somebody who is the one who does a lot of the things, when all of a sudden you get a team of people who they want to do the things, it's you kind of feel lazy. You feel like they look at you like you're just expecting them to do things or whatever it may be. And it's hard. It's a hard transition for anybody who cares about their business and their people.
Yeah, it's a hard mental transition. It really is. I don't think I'm quite as far along as you are, but actively headed that way. And oftentimes the people, they want to do it and they're better than you. And if you can give them the reins and give them the training, there's a better quality product being given to clients if you can make that happen.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, to that point, Lewis, our operations manager, JJ, he's been with me for 3 years now. And if you follow our social media, you've seen his face on there for a while. He was the one making all the videos out on the job sites and things like that. But he, to be honest, he's in his mid 40s. He's a retired highway patrolman. He's a father of 3, husband for 20, I think he said it was 22, 23 years. Just a lot of life has been lived. Yeah. And when he kind of came on board, he realized that there was opportunity to grow and to develop and build a business. And then when he kind of took over the role of leading the other crew members, it just went well. He had more patience than I would have. He was able to give more attention to them than I could. Like, he was able to work at a pace that was more consistent than I could, because he could focus just on operations. Mm-hmm. So I would say our culture, our employee retention, things like that have all gone up since we've put people in place who can focus on that and do good at their jobs. And that's just one example. Whether it's our office manager, who she's been with me for a little over 2 years now, going on 3, into next year. It's just having people in place who are good at what they do. They care about what they do, and they care about the people that they're doing it with. That's what makes all the difference. It's what allows me to look at new and future business opportunities, continue business development and growth and sales and things like that. And you have to get the right people on the bus, and then you can figure out exactly how you're going to get where you're going to go.
Yeah, it's huge. I remember, I think it was 2020, maybe early 21. I joined Top Contractor School for a short period, and I got to watch you. I think I got to know you a bit better during that, because you were asking questions of Brian. And what do you think? Because you were sitting there, and I would watch you. You're just thinking, and there were some things that you were bringing up, and I forget what it was, but you were in like a growth. You were very much in a growth mode, I could tell. What do you think has changed since then till now? The last 3 years, that's made the biggest difference for you in your business.
The vision is much larger. I'd say that's the first thing that comes to mind, is my vision for where this can go, what we can do, who we can impact, who we can help, things like that is just much larger. And to be honest, like there's no cap on it. Before it was like, okay, we're going to be a great paving company or seal coating company in Charlotte, or okay, well, maybe, one day we can get down into South Carolina too, or something like that. But now it's just like, there's no limit. And it's because, again, the proximity of the people that I put myself in are doing things that are way more than I ever imagined. And I'm like, well, dang, they're no different than I am. Why can't I do that? If they can do it, so can I, and so that's the biggest thing that's changed, is just the vision is just much bigger with no cap in sight.
I love it. I know we're working on some stuff behind the scenes. I don't know how much you want to share on here of the vision. I'm not putting you on the spot. Yeah,
it's coming.
I know we're gonna talk a little bit about the vision here in a few months, but there's some cool stuff in that vision, and it's exciting.
Well, and to that note, Lewis, I'll say what we're working on is how we can make more of an impact on the people in and around our industry than what we currently do. We want to do it through giving opportunity, through giving guidance, leadership, things like that. And like I said, it's the vision of impacting more people, the vision of influencing more people, the vision of just changing the way that people can live and operate and do business and things like that. So yeah, a lot of exciting things coming that I'm excited to be working with you on. I know that's something when we started working together, actually before we started working together, I made it very clear, hey, here's our vision and where we're going. Are you willing to endure this with us or not? Because if you weren't, it's like, hey, we probably should just not work together now. Exactly. But when I told it to you, you're like, yes, I want to figure this out with you. Like, I want to be a part of this. And that's what we have to have. We have to have complete alignment with all the people we're working with right now to make sure that we're all on the same page, going in the same direction, rowing in the same direction with each other. So
it's going to be fun,
man.
It's going to be fun. You mentioned the word impact there. I think that word gets thrown around a lot, but this year it really clicked. A mentor of mine was talking, and I was very focused, just frankly, I was very focused on status, for the first 3 years of the business. We're all chasing that revenue, right? And revenue is like how well you're doing in business is what you think when you first start out, at least for me, right? Chasing the sales, chasing the top line revenue. And this year it switched, I would say around March. It really clicked for me. It doesn't matter. It switched for me, and it just comes down to impact over status. I don't care what the status is. How much of an impact can we have with our clients, with our employees, with the results that we're getting, with the profits that we're making, so that we can then turn around. My thing is the homeless community. How can we leave an impact in there? And I see that with you, and it's cool to be along for the ride for sure.
Yeah, the impact, man. That's what it's all about. Our businesses are just the vehicle to get us there to make the impact. And then the status and the revenue and things like that are the byproduct of the impact we make.
Can you talk a bit about your morning routine? I've seen glimpses of it, but I get the sense that you spend a lot of time reading and thinking. Thinking is something that I certainly have not done enough of, and I would say the last 3 months, it's something that I'm leaning into a lot more, and that's where the clarity and the vision can grow. Talk about that and take us on a little bit of a journey there.
I don't know how detailed you or the audience wants me to get with me walking around my house in my slippers and robe in the morning and stuff, but no, my mornings, man, are, I don't want to say they're sacred to me, but they are very important to how the rest of my day goes. It sets the tone for the day.
Yep.
I will say that I have had to get better over the last year or so about being able to break the routine and get back on it. That was brought up to me, that it's not always about staying in the routine. It's about when things happen that you can't control, are you able to get back in it? And so I'd say 99% of the time, my routine is pretty much the same. Wherever I'm at in the country, whatever I'm doing, whoever I'm with, I will make my schedule around whatever else is going on to keep my routine the same. But yeah, it starts every morning with a cup of coffee. I know Scott just commented on here, slippers, robe, and a coffee. That's it. Slippers, robe, and coffee every morning. Typically, I have one or two of my dogs come downstairs with me. We sit on the couch. No TV on, no sounds, anything like that. Start my day with a devotional. Typically, I just use the Bible app on my phone, and I find different devotionals. A lot of times they're around like leadership or relationships. Because I'm a husband first and a business owner second, right? I can start a new business a lot easier than I could find another awesome wife. So I got to make sure I keep that stuff right. My relationship with God has to be right and centered and things like that. So take it, 10, 15 minutes, do a little bit of devotional and prayer time in the morning. And then I typically spend about 30 minutes reading some sort of a personal development book. Sometimes a lot of times it's business related. Sometimes it's, again, personal development, just being a man, being a husband, whatever it may be. And just try to put in that time, just start my day with like just putting good things into my brain, really, like into my body. And so just making sure that I do that on a day-to-day basis, it helps ensure that the people around me that depend on me get the best version of me. If I don't get that time, again, like I said, I've gotten better about, you know, hey, I still have an obligation to show up. I still have to be the best version of me that I can be, despite my routine getting messed up.
Mhm.
But yeah, generally speaking, about 98, 99% of the time, it's the same every morning. And it's funny because, for a long time, Kelsey's family, when I'd go, we'd go visit them or whatever, they'd be like, man, like he just doesn't talk to anybody in the morning, and something wrong with him or whatever. And she finally had to tell him, be like, no, just kind of leave him alone for a little bit. You'll like him better if you leave him alone for a little bit. So, but again, as I've gotten older and more aware of things, I will build my morning routine around, to also accommodate other people, so. But yeah, Lewis, it's extremely important to me to stick to that and to make sure that I'm starting my day putting good in. It's something actually I've read it in a book or podcast years ago. It says, don't get on any sort of social media or any media for that matter in the first like 30 to 60 minutes of your day, and just watch how different your attitude is. Because if the first thing you do is open your phone in the morning and you're checking everybody's highlight reels on Facebook or Instagram, and you're like, dang,
you're already behind.
I didn't get to go to that concert, or dang, I didn't get to this, or man, I can't believe they did that. You're already starting on a downhill slope, and don't get me wrong, I'll check social media after I do my reading and devotionals, because that is how we keep up with each other. It's how we keep up with family and friends and things. There's been a lot of things I've seen, people look for prayer requests. They say, hey, can you please keep my family in your prayers? Well, it's my morning time, so maybe I'll get back into that real quick. Say a quick prayer for them. So it's important. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, just making sure that you're able to kind of keep things quiet and to yourself and really put things in has been a big impact for me.
I love it. Speaking of books, I randomly ask guests this, and I'd like to know your thoughts. What are like top 3-5 books that come to mind?
Yeah, so there's one called The Go-Giver. That one's by Patrick Lencioni. It's a fable about basically, it's like there's a guy who, he's a young businessman. He's trying to learn how to like get these deals and stuff, and he meets this guy who's like the connector or whatever, and like it's just a whole story about, more or less, the more you give, the more impact you'll be able to have, the more charisma you'll have, and things like that. So it's about being focused on the right things first, and then knowing everything else will come as a result. Another one that comes to mind is The Magic of Thinking Big. That one is one that I read typically at least once a year. A lot of times it's at the very end of the year or beginning of the year. Kind of helps refocus, like, hey, keep thinking big. Like I said earlier, the vision is bigger. Yeah. You asked what's changed in the last couple of years. The vision is bigger. So The Magic of Thinking Big, that's a fantastic one. The other one that really changed how I look at myself as a business owner is called The Highest Calling by Larry Janeski.
That one rocked my world when I saw you post about it.
Yeah, so that one, again, it's another fable. I kind of like it when, like, not all the books I read are just stories and stuff, but it's a story that helps relate it to you. It's no different than watching a movie where you feel like, your favorite superhero is Superman. And when you watch that movie, you just feel that like energy of Clark Kent and Superman and everything that he's doing. Well, these books, as a business owner, you feel that energy of the business owner, of the husband, of the leader, whatever he's going through or she's going through in the book, and you feel that and you embody it. So then when you do that, you take what they're talking about way more seriously. And so since those identities aligned with each other, we're able to gain more out of those books. But that one is one really about what it means to build a business that is responsible for changing lives, for impacting people, for providing opportunity, and just seeing things bigger and bigger and bigger. I think that's the biggest thing, Lewis, that most business owners struggle with, is being able to see a bigger vision. Mm-hmm. Because at least in our space, or in my space, in the contracting world, most business owners are contractor turned business owner. So they know how to do the job. They can paint the lines, they can lay the asphalt, cut the grass, hang the lights, do the roof, whatever it is. But they don't actually think anything more than that. Then they can't figure out why people don't want to keep working for them, because all they're coming there for is to fulfill your own vision, your own life, pad your own pockets, things like that. But if you switch it and you think bigger, you worry more about the impact, you know that how many lives you're going to affect and provide opportunity for, then all of a sudden that bigger vision allows everyone else's visions to fit inside of it. Because we call a spade a spade. The majority of the people on the face of this earth work in a company. They work as an employee, a W-2 employee of a company. There's less business owners than there are employees, and that's okay. But the business owners have the obligation to have a big enough vision and plan that all of those employees' visions, dreams, and plans can fit inside of it. And that's something that all those books, those 3 books I just mentioned, The Go-Giver, Magic of Thinking Big, and The Highest Calling, all those have that in common is think about the impact, think about the vision that you can accomplish as the business owner. Use the business as your vehicle to make the impact, and then the destination will be the byproduct, which is, whether it's, fulfillment for yourself or the impact you get to make or the financial freedom you get to create, things like that. So a lot of those books just help reinforce that idea, to keep just thinking big and worrying about the people. Hell, another one that just came to mind is People First. That's a book that was recommended. Marvin Joel's, his group, the Blacktop Banner Success Group, they sent that out to everybody in that group that I help with that group also. And then Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Gorda, whatever. That is a fantastic book about just creating great experiences for your clients, things like that. It's about the people, it's all the books that make a big impact on me are about big vision and putting your people first.
Who wrote People First? Is it People First Culture by Michael Falcon?
No, it's by 3 and Jackie Carpenter. The guy's name is actually 3, Three. They wrote that one. They're in the hospitality industry. They basically they build their job is to go to private clubs, like country clubs, and kind of almost like bar rescue. You've heard the show Bar Rescue, where you're going to bring bars back to life. Well, they bring country clubs up, and they just get those developed and up and running. So it was a really good book. I was actually, to be honest, I was hesitant about reading it. I'm like, I've never freaking heard of this. This sounds cheesy, whatever. And I got into it. I was like, man, these people are smart. They got a great story. As somebody who I'm not afraid to admit, I like, country club type stuff. I like a golf course. I like a nice meal. I like nice things, right? When I was reading it, I'm like, man, I can see this. I can see how different types of country clubs or places I've gotten to experience in my life, I can see that the good ones embody these things. And then the ones where you're like, what the heck is going on here? They don't. So definitely was a good one for sure.
I just pulled both of them up on Amazon while you were talking, so they're going on the list. They'll be here next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the Highest Calling, that book, like I said, rocked my world. I saw you post about it, and I snagged it and read it. And the story, the way it's written in a story, it just hits harder. Yeah, you can read after a while. A lot of business books become the same message regurgitated in a slightly different, dry way. Yeah, but when it's turned into an allegory like that, man, it hits home. So highly recommend that one for everybody.
Yeah. And a lot of this stuff too, man, like you said, a lot of them are similar content, regurgitated a little bit differently, things like that. I was just talking with Kelsey about this last night, actually, about, the podcasts that I listen to or the books that I listen to, as she's come on board to the company and she's starting to get more into that leadership role and business minded role. I've told her, I'm like, cause she's the type, she's a very intelligent woman. I'm not just saying that because she may or may not watch this or whatever, but she's very smart. She picks up on things quick. She learns quick. So a lot of times where I'll sit and say oh yeah, I this podcast was talking about that. She's like, yeah, I know. We've already talked about that. And I'm like, yeah, but it's different. It's the same concept, but said differently, or the same, theory, but explained from a different perspective. And I said, at the end of the day, all I'm doing by reading the same type of stuff or listening to the same type of stuff is just keeping those things front of mind. It just keeps the wheels turning. You could say, well, I put my car in drive and I hit the gas once, but I didn't get to where I wanted to go. Well, yeah, you're going in the right direction. You're coasting, hopefully, but you still have to keep pushing on the gas. You still have to keep putting fuel in it to like just keep the thing going. And that's what this thing is it's just a big engine that you just have to keep putting fuel in it. And so I don't want people to get, discouraged if they're like, well, I already read a book on that, or I already listened to something like that. And you just got to keep going, keep putting more in it.
Got to keep going. Yeah. The book topic's kind of on my mind because I saw someone post about it a few days ago. And there was one book, he said, the book's okay, but this one chapter is worth buying 10 of them. And it's like, you never know what nuggets you're going to run into.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. Daniel, this has been fun. I know we both have a busy Friday to finish up here. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate the working relationship we're building. Appreciate the nuggets you've dropped. And any final words before we jump off?
I would say that I'd kind of revert back to what I was talking about earlier about, why I'm so driven and things like that to try and keep growing. And it's just my encouragement to every person is, think about, what you're capable of and are you living up to those capabilities? Not every day is going to be perfect. We're going to have off days. We're going to have rough days and things like that. But are you able to get back on the horse, get back on track, and just live up to those capabilities? Because someone somewhere is counting on you to win. So that's what I'll leave you with.
Not a whole lot to add to that. Appreciate you coming on, Daniel. Appreciate you guys showing up. We had quite a few listeners throughout it. Scott, appreciate you showing up as always. And guys, we'll leave you with that. Stick around in the waiting room, Daniel, and I'll see you in a second.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lewis.
Cheers, guys.